Hello, everybody. So this talk, I'm going to discuss about how we are building a ETL designer and pipeline over Apache Falcon. But before I start, how many of you are already familiar with what Apache Falcon is? Please raise your hands. Great. So for the others, I might just give a brief background along the line. And there's a session tomorrow on Apache Falcon, so you guys should plan to attend if you plan to. So I am Srikanth Sundarajan. So I work for InMobi as a principal architect. My colleague Naresh was about to join me, but he couldn't. So we both planning to discuss the details of this work that we are currently doing to extend Falcon to add the ETL design capabilities. So we're going to look at generally a quick background on ETL and ETL challenges on big data, and then look at what Falcon tries to do in general and how we are extending Falcon to support some of these capabilities natively within it. So, you know, probably most of you are already familiar with what ETL or extract, transforms, and loads are. Basically, that's something that's going to allow you to extract higher value out of data. So you could basically refine, curate, process, do validations, and mix with multiple sets of data to create higher order information or better information and further intelligence over the data to drive business. So that's typically what an ETL is. And, decades ago, you used to have a single large system which used to have all data. Now we have such diverse input streams that we are having to work with, and plethora of data that is coming in. This has assumed even further significance in terms of the role of ETL in this world. So there is too much data that we need to work with, and we need to have a cohesive view over that data and in a refined form, and that's where ETL plays a big role. And the sudden explosion of data and in large volumes makes it very hard for us to use traditional ETL tools to build that. That's something that we can discuss along the line. So if you look at, I was actually a slide early, sorry. So if you look at standard use cases for ETL, if you will, so there are data warehousing application, which most of you are familiar with, or business intelligence. So you basically bring all your data in and try to shove it into a warehouse in a very refined form, which can then be used for business intelligence applications. There are other use cases which may not be necessarily as familiar as the warehousing use case would be, like a migration, where you'd move data from one older system to a newer system, or one version of the application to other version. So even there, ETLs play a major role or a very important role. There are also use cases relating to consolidation, where you're trying to, when you do an acquisition or a merger, things like where you could bring multiple sets of data which are similar in nature, which you need to merge into a single unified view. That's another use case where you would find this playing a big role. And you also have archival for moving data out, which is not your active set, but you require them for compliance reasons. You also have master data management to give you a single view of your main core information, your customer information, for instance, where you would need to do ETLs. And also synchronization to provide you disaster recovery and BCP for BCP requirements. You would want to move data from one data center to another data center. These are some of the applications where ETL plays a dominant role. So in terms of authoring, what you have really is mostly hand-coded tools, hand-coded applications. So most of your things are written through scripts you write to process this data and move it to your target locations. And there are also off-the-shelf systems available which you could buy and use in enterprise and try to do this. Most of this is available today in conventional databases where you could take the data through these tools and process them and perform your ETLs in a very easy to configure and plug and play, and more like drag and drop kind of stuff. So there are also tools that available, not tools available, but people build in-house to cater to their specific needs in their organization. But this is typically what happens in the ETL world. So in the big data world, so essentially there are three main challenges that are come in terms of when you're trying to do this ETL at very, very large scales or large volumes of data. Scale itself is a big problem because you're ingesting not in gigabytes anymore, but several terabytes per day or hundreds of terabytes per day. You're bringing in huge volumes of data, which you need to process through this ETL, especially some of this data could also be with very, very fluid schema. So the schema of the data keeps changing on a continuous basis as opposed to what you would be familiar with in an RDBMS world where there is a fixed set of columns in a table and you work with it. They don't change that often. But in the big data world, you would see that the schema itself is fairly fluid. And sometimes you also work with fairly unstructured data, which means that you have to discover information out of it without it conforming to any set schema. So the freshness of the data is also very, very important. So you need to be able to do this data processing at really large scale, which is coming in, and with such diverse variety in it, but also be able to do it fast enough to get insights out of it very, very quickly. So the turnaround time that you require to process this is also significantly lower as we are trying to untap value from this data. So if you look at big data ETL space, so most of it today what happens is hand-coded applications, right? So you'd find people writing MapReduce jobs or pig jobs or Hive jobs, or people could be using cascading or Splunk or Spark, etc. So most of it is being hand-coded today, and you would use a scheduler of choice to orchestrate this and do your processing. You would, to bring in data from outside into the cluster is also often a challenge as well. And once it is in, to be able to process this in a easy fashion, basically the problem with hand coding this in these scripts using Pig or Hive or any of these for that matter is it takes a lot of time to implement, and it takes a lot of effort to keep them in good shape in terms of maintenance. So and also monitoring these and making sure it's running healthy and it's producing the right results at the right time, bound by your SLAs, is often a very, very big challenge. So there are many ETL tools that are available that were available in the conventional world, which have been retrofitted to some form or shape to support for Hadoop or big data space in general. So there have been tools that are commercially available which have been tailored a bit to work with Hadoop. But the biggest problem is that they are not natively built for Hadoop, which means that the performance and efficiency of those tools tend to be a little poorer. However, in terms of the expressibility of your ETL functions, in terms of your ability to quickly define and maintain versions of these ETL functions, etc., are very, very convenient and easy. So, that's a bit of a context in terms of what is available out there in terms of conventional ETL tools and what are the gaps with respect to how it does not fit nicely in the big data space, and how we could have, where we have an opportunity to fix that using this work that we are currently doing that can solve building pipelines and maintaining these pipelines a lot more easier on the big data space. So just for the ones who here who don't know what Apache Falcon is, Falcon is basically a data management platform we built and incubated in Apache like a year and a half ago, still an incubator. So the project basically tries to create information between, or dependency information between data sets that reside in your Hadoop cluster and the processing logic that is built or is defined over that data. So using this dependency information, it is able to do data management functions very declaratively. So I could say, here is a data that has come into the Hadoop cluster, which is periodic in nature. It comes every day, and we need to maintain it for a period of 6 weeks. And after that, we want to throw it away or archive it somewhere. And then this data, once it's available, is now available for processing by downstream consumption. And you could basically define this as a bunch of entities in that system, and the system would basically be able to use that for performing standard data management functions and also allow you to do orchestration. And it uses Woozy as the underlying workflow scheduler for orchestrating the work. So the off-the-shelf what Falcon provides today as data management function is it offers data movement recipes. So you could define saying here is data that is available in cluster 1, and I want this data to be replicated to a alternate cluster or backup cluster every hour, for instance, or every day. You could simply declare that in a config file, and the system would take care of moving this within its SLA on a continuous basis. And you could also do this locally within the cluster, and also do a cross-colo replication and keep it in sync. And you could also bring in data from multiple clusters into a single cluster. So you could actually have parts of a data set residing in many small data centers, and you could bring them all together and consolidate them in one place. So it has all these capabilities in terms of data movement. So that's one of the main things in terms of the ETL functionality, if you will. So you let it first source all the data through various connectors that you would write. So some of the data could be in DB, some of the data could be in other clusters, etc. You need to bring all those data into one place for you to do this processing. So that's something that it provides as a native capability. And all of this is done declaratively, which means that you configure this in an XML file and it kind of takes it from there. It also has ability to do data retention and archival. So you could say I need this data only for a certain duration, after which I want to just throw it away. So it would take care of evicting this data once that time elapses. And also it has abilities to archive this data into, say, a cloud or other low-cost storage that it can move data from Hadoop into something out. So these are things that it offers today in terms of its capabilities. Also has lineage that it maintains, because it has this dependency information between what data is actually on Hadoop, what is running over that data to produce what other data. So it basically it has this concept called feed and process. A feed is a data set on which a process runs, and it can produce one or more feeds. So because a process has a declared definition which says feed A is the input and feed B is the output, it has a lineage now that feed B has lineage to feed A. So it has this lineage information. So that also is kind of useful to maintain. So that's something that the system tries to maintain. So the gap here in Falcon then is, once the data management part of moving and evicting and archiving is all taken care, the other big part is it has to support processing this data and creating more refined forms of this data. Now what it does is it basically allows you to do this orchestration. It has abilities to do late data management, which means that if input data were to change, it will rerun these process on behalf of the process. It supports for read, trace, and monitoring. These are capabilities that it provides right now off the shelf in the Falcon system. But where it falls short is that there is no easy way to define what this process has to do. So essentially what happens today is when Falcon processor defined, they have a pig script or a MapReduce job or a Hive SQL, etc., defined within them and say, just run this. So as far as Falcon is concerned, it's basically a blind box. It is blindfolded. So it doesn't know what's actually underneath that in terms of the processing logic. So it just says, okay, here is the input, I'm going to give this to you and produce whatever output, and I don't know how you're going to achieve this. So what we are trying to do right now is to see if this black box can be opened up, made transparent, and we can build a designer to design this flow. So that is basically something that will help us to get to a milestone 1 in terms of the ETL capabilities inside Falcon. So you have data management capabilities. Now with process definition capabilities, we would be able to define a feed in Falcon and declare what it needs to do in terms of its life cycle, and then you would then be able to process that through native steps in Falcon to produce more refined forms of data. So that's what the pipeline designer that we are trying to work on right now. It's still work is under progress, so it should be available sometime in fall. Just to give some sense of how it would look is in Falcon, basically in the designer, we have basically 4 elements that we are trying to define. One is the data. Second is a process or a pipeline. the third is basically action, and fourth is transformation. So we're going to look at each of these four components that make up this pipeline designer. So to start with, we'll look at the data aspect. So what we define in Falcon feed is actually the data. So each entity in Falcon is basically registered in HCatalog as a partition. So which means that the schema is available for the designer to use in terms of understanding what elements make up that data set and what partitions are available within that feed, and in what clusters are these feed available. All this information is encapsulated in this feed metadata that is already configured in Falcon. So we would basically then be able to kind of use the other configuration elements of the feed definition, such as the eviction rule or the archival rule or the replication rule, etc., to take care of the data movement and the management part, which already it does. So once this feed is configured, it is now available to the designer to not only figure out what data is available at what frequency in what cluster, because of its integration with HCatalog and because of its familiarity in terms of how this feed maps to a table in HCatalog, it is also aware of what's the schema of this data set, and it also understands how to read and write data in and out of this particular table. So that is something that it is now able to get because of its integration with HCatalog. So then we will look at the concept of pipeline or the process. So the pipeline is basically a logical grouping of processes. A process is something that consumes one or more feeds as inputs and produce one or more feeds as output, basically. A process in turn has a workflow which allows you to stitch together multiple sets of action. These actions are some logical unit of work that is done within this process, and a process is now a composite collection of these actions, which is like a DAG that you could build, and you could have fork and join semantics within that workflow, etc. And the process essentially is something that runs at a specific frequency. So you should be able to say, I'm going to use hourly data sets which are going to come in every hour into the cluster, and I'm going to process this at the end of the second hour, consuming 2 hours of data for each of these data sets, and produce a 2-hourly aggregate of that, or you could run a science algorithm on it, or you could join with something else to produce some other more refined output. Now this process then will be stitched by a series of actions, which we will get to in a minute. And pipeline is basically a logical view over this process. So a process is basically tagged with a tag to be belonging to a pipeline. So a pipeline then could have multiple processes that are together. So it's basically something that will allow a group or a team to own a logical set of processes or workflows that make up a business logic or a application functionality. So we'll go to the actions. This is where most of the actions and transforms are new additions right now. So feeds and process already exist in Falcon. So we're not trying to introduce anything new in the designer. Actions and transforms are new, and that's what is being added into Falcon in the pipeline designer. Actions are basically the building blocks of the pipeline. So an action is something like do a data transformation action, which means that it takes input data and transforms into something else and produces some other output. So that could be one logical action, and actions could be stitched together through transitions. So you would basically be able to say, take this data set, do these joins, perform this aggregation over it, run this algorithm on it, produce this data, and once that data is available, store that into a feed location, and then once the data is stored, take that off and start running another process or another action on it. And you could also have notification actions saying, once you're done with this process, you could send an email, or you could log into a SSH gateway and transfer this file somewhere, or you could be connecting using a HTTP interface and downloading the data or pushing data somewhere. So you could actually compose a workflow with these actions, and these actions could have a fork or a join. So you could have multiple actions running concurrently, and they could all have a barrier and come back and join back into the DAG. So it's a DAG that you will have in this workflow. And what we are also going to allow in the designer is to be able to extend this action and create new actions at the user space. So users should be able to create new actions and then drop it into the designer for themselves to use or for others to use. So in a way, system extends itself for customization and other extensions that any user would want to do. Off the shelf, we would have a bunch of actions that the designer would come with. But besides that, it should be possible for people to extend it in any form, as long as the action is conforming to the actions contract. The actions also has these notion of input and output variables. Actually, not an input variable, just an output variable. So each action is allowed to produce a bunch of variables with some values, and these can be used for the transition, conditional transition from one action to another, or it could be used as input in the next action. So you could use this as a flow of information within the DAG for so that it's connected, and you could make decisions along the way while running this pipeline. It also has native validation capabilities. Each action could have post-processing logic defined in terms of what validation steps to be done before the action is deemed to be successful, besides just looking at the application status that make up that action to tell you whether the action is indeed successful. So we're going to look at transforms next. Transforms are basically transforms are basically something that is specific to a data transformation action. So there are many actions that we talked about, like a notification action or a SSH action or a email action, etc. So one of these actions could be a data transformation action. A data transformation action can internally have lot more transforms that make up that action. Data transform action is something that allows you to stitch together logical flows or processing units of data. For example, I could have take a piece of data, and as the data flows through the pipe, you could apply a filter on it and say throw away data elements that does not conform to a certain condition. Or we could say take this data, extract information, only part of it, and then project it further for downstream consumption. Or you could say group this data by these sets of elements and then aggregate some of these measures for some kind of roll-ups that we want to create. Or we could say take these two sets, create an intersection of it or a union of it, or do a join between these two sets to produce more refined. So the number of transforms that you could create is something there is core set of transform system will provide, and similar to actions, it's possible to allow the user to extend it as long as the transform contracts are being adhered to. So we'd be having this transform as a Java interface, and people could just extend that, create the new transformations, and then drop it into the system for basically consumption. So the thing about this transform is there is also this notion of composite transforms that we are allowing users to build. A composite transform is a collection of multiple smaller or primitive transforms. So you could stitch together multiple smaller transforms to create one composite functionality with limited input. So in a way, it makes it easy for people to create very specific transforms that map to a business functionality that they may have, and use that natively as opposed to composing using very primitive set of transforms in their system. So this again is something that we could extend and throw in. And each of these transforms and these action objects basically has configurations in it that allow for the configuration of those particular primitives. So for example, you could have a filter transform, the filter expression could be a configuration in there. Or and the important thing to note here is that the data is operating without knowing where the data is present. So all those information are defined already in the feed definition in Falcon. The Falcon knows where is the feed, what is the table corresponding to that feed, what is the schema, etc. And it doesn't have to worry about all those aspects. It has, you're purely concentrating on how to construct your pipeline and what business logic goes into that pipeline definition. So it's like I said, it's possible to add more transforms and extend the system. Also, we have this notion of user-defined functions that allow you to do scalar functions on the data in any one of those steps. So you should be, there is a contract, again an interface for user-defined functions. So it will be possible for users to add those user-defined functions and then use it inside any of these transform actions. So if you look at a MapReduce world, you would find that these transforms have either something that gets executed in the map phase or in the reduce phase. So I'll go over the list of transforms that we are currently working on right now. It's possible to add more transforms at any one of these phases, and also at the partitioner phase or the combiner phase, completely unlocking all the value or all the potential that the MapReduce system offers, and still have the simplicity in expressing our flows. So once the pipeline is actually designed, and then you could have a deploy the pipeline into execution. The Falcon natively offers monitoring and dashboard capabilities. That is something that it already has today, and we'll be able to leverage that for the pipelines that are built natively through Falcon in the designer. So you should be able to build a pipeline, deploy it in one or more clusters, and then be able to track its execution lifecycle on a continuous basis through the monitoring system. And it also provides the dependency between so let's say there are 3 sets of feeds that this pipeline that you've designed is using, and for some reason your pipeline is not finished. You could then inspect which of these inputs have not, which are not available yet, because of which your pipeline is stalled. And you could also look at the SLA of your pipeline and make sure that it's meeting that, and you could get a SLO in jeopardy errors when they're not running in a timely fashion. So you could have all those capabilities from the standard dashboard feature or the admin console capability of Falcon. So just a bit on the internals. So there is a designer UI that has UI through which the end user will sit and create the pipelines. That sits over the designer service, which is a REST API. The designer service internally has a compiler and optimizer, which basically allows you to take these flow definitions, the actions and transforms that make the pipeline, and compile them into executable logic, and bundles them inside a process object and sends it to Falcon for execution. The designer themselves has to use the feed definition in Falcon server to understand what's the schema, what's the feed, and what are the properties of that feed. Also needs to look at the HCatalog service to understand what's the schema that make up this feed, to figure out what's in it and what are the elements that make up that feed. So the Falcon dashboard can then be used for the monitoring lifecycle. So the storage that the pipeline designer uses has these versioning of these pipelines. So it should be possible for you to design a pipeline and then deploy it, and you can make a change to that and then deploy a newer version. Because it is versioned, it should be possible for you to roll back to the previous version without having to do much except just revert back the changes. So it should be it's something that we are hoping to include in the first version itself. So that's the broad level architecture, if you will, of how the pipeline designer is going to be in the Falcon system. Very minor details about, some details about what the internals. Ultimately, the transformation actions are going to be compiled into PIC scripts, That's what the process definition in Falcon is going to use for execution basically. We're going to use initially Pig as the execution engine to or the scripting language for us to generate all the code. So in the previous slide, we saw the designer service as a compiler and optimizer. It basically, all it tries to do is generate this Pig scripts and send over. And Pig itself has a native optimizer in it, so we are not trying to optimize anything. So mostly the initial version, the optimizer would be a pass-through, hoping that Pig would be able to do all the optimization if we follow the best practices on creating these Pig scripts. So the way it would be, so everything is open for extension in the system. So like we said, we can extend actions. It should be possible to extend transformations, and should be possible to extend even the user-defined functions. We're also looking to keep the compilation on the language that it uses also extensible, though it would be a little, I don't think it's very easy to make that change, but if someone wants to have a completely cascading based execution engine as opposed to Pig, let's say, so that should be possible as well. So from a implementation, though, in the initial version, we would be sticking with Pig. So I just want to spend a few minutes to, so the system is still being built. It would, like I said, take a few more months for it to have an initial version out. So we have a quick mock that has been built out, or kind of wireframe. I could just quickly walk you through how the designer would look, just to get a sense of what's kind of coming. So is everybody able to see this? All right, so initially, so we discussed about data being available, the feeds and the schema being available on the left-hand pane. So you should be able to search through and navigate to the specific element of data that you're interested. And you should be able to construct a new pipeline, which opens up the transforms and actions. So you could then drag and drop a data element out of this and include it. And you should be able to explore the schema right when you add it there, in terms of its types and what clusters is it configured, what's the frequency of it, etc. And you should then be able to add various transformation actions on top of it. So I should be able to do a projection, at which time you should be able to look at the schema of the left table and be able to emit the ones that you're interested in and drop the ones that you don't want. And also in the process be able to modify the elements of the columns or data elements there before it goes to the next stage. So you could then keep adding more and more transform steps onto it, and each of them you could keep configuring, and you could choose to store this data temporarily in an intermediate storage as opposed to a persistent storage. What I mean by persistent storage is it ends up being another feed. If you store it into a specific table, it then becomes another feed in the system. So so you could keep adding this, and once you're satisfied with your flow per se, you should then be able to compile it, and the compilation should allow you to, I mean, it's the way we are trying to build this is going to be fairly type safe. So it's going to throw errors saying, any of the steps pointing specifically to the step that has the problem, and allow things to be resolved. Once it is satisfactorily resolved, you should be able to inject test inputs at any stage of the pipeline. Anywhere in the node, you should be able to pick and say, hey, here is the input for, inject the input at that stage, and provided some random set of data for it to test. And once you're providing this data, you should be able to trace till any stage downstream from that stage on. So for example, if let's say there is a 6-stage pipeline, I should be able to inject data at the 3rd stage, instrument it with some data, and then say from henceforth test with this data going down, as long as all dependencies for the subsequent steps are materialized, which means and then once you do that, the system should be able to kind of project each of the steps output, and you should be able to inspect that vis-a-vis the input that you had basically given. So once you're done with with the validating if the pipeline is indeed correct, it should be possible to provision this, which means that you can say, when do you want to start this, which clusters do you want to deploy this. The cluster entity definition is already in Falcon, so it knows when you say deploy, where does it need to run, how does it need to get scheduled, all that information is already available. It should be able to use this to run the flows. We also have this version stuff, which I have not broken up further. So the version should allow you to look at past histories of this pipeline. You should be able to pick any one that you're interested in and be able to roll back or view the design of that and compare that with newer versions of the pipeline. So you should be able to do that. So that's all I had in the mocks. So I'm done. So questions? Sorry. Okay. Can you use the mic? So the choice of pig for us is conscious for the generation, because you would see later during the day, pig is actually having a port to Storm. So pig on Storm is being kind of built out. So we should be able to leverage that and use it. So that's the intention. So Falcon would, besides having this feed, which is more batchy in nature, would have a stream as an entity. So you should be able to depend on a stream as opposed to a feed and be able to exactly do the same thing. All right. So
hello.
Yeah.
So is it fair to say that Falcon is trying to solve similar problems to Oozie, but with more usable user interface? Or can you comment on that?
Yeah, so we actually use Oozie internally for all the work. So the biggest difference is it does not provide you the right level of abstraction. It allows you to just define these workflows and just run them, or the coordinators and run them. There is a lot of repetition of definition in Oozie. That is something that Falcon tries to kind of address and makes these entities relate to each other in a standard form. And also standard set of functionalities in terms of data management functions are available as recipes inside the Falcon. Now, with the designer, it makes it even more complete in terms of what it can do with this. So internally, Oozie is something that we actually are using for all the orchestration. Okay.
You mentioned that it's basically a DAG and that you're using Oozie and Pig under the hood. Does that rule out the possibility that you'll ever be iterative?
Does it rule out the possibility
iterative?
of what?
Iteration looping?
No, I didn't.
So I want to be able to construct workflows that are more event-driven and that can be iterative. And that's one of the requirements of the workflows at my workplace. And I'm trying to see if Falcon will ever evolve to meet that need or not.
So one of the things that we are doing from a streaming capabilities, we are seeing if it is possible to work with Nimbus as opposed to Oozie for a streaming set of inputs.
Okay.
So if that's what you're meaning by event, that is something that, or you're talking about event as in, like, say you get a notification of a single event that occurs and then you want to trigger something based on that. So that is something that Oozie is already working on and already has support for. So you could basically have a notification and then trigger your workflows based on that.
True, but I'm still not able to build looping workflows where I can loop over a certain set of jobs and then continue to proceed to completion. But I can't do that right now. And I'm trying to see if Falcon, given the pure event-driven nature that we are.
So we should be able to build that abstraction inside this. The fact that we are using Oozie underneath may be a limitation in that front because the Oozie does not provide you the looping construct. I have used an application in my own company where we are trying to iterate over the data to create a graph, and it requires multiple iteration till it converges.
Right.
And that's one case where we have not been able to use the workflow definition to orchestrate that. We ended up writing a MapReduce Java action to create that internally. So that is a gap, so we might look to handle that sometime down down the line. But
Okay.
we don't have any thoughts specifically at this point to provide that capability.
Thank you.
So you mentioned using HCatalog as your schema reference, right, as an input for Falcon to work, and I'm also assuming that you're also registering your output data sets
Right.
into HCatalog, so you can keep your whole data set under proper data management. So, but you also mentioned that you are collecting the lineage of the data and how it's being transformed. So where are you keeping that information? And is that part of the development to also provide
Which information?
the tools?
Which
the
information?
lineage.
Lineage.
Yeah,
Lineage is,
yeah.
so currently Falcon is trying to maintain the lineage using a native store, which is basically a graph it maintains. So using the Blueprint API, so it creates feeds and process and cluster entities as vertices, and the connection between them as edges, and each instance of the sorry, the light is on my face. So the feed instances and their dependency with the process instance is also maintained as a graph. This entire information is persisted exclusively and maintained by Falcon, and that is where the lineage is coming from.
Got it. And then the Falcon catalog is also, where is it located? Also in a proprietary store?
Yeah, it's basically stored on HDFS,
Files.
but it's proprietary. Right?
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I have a question about the data lineage as well. Some of the conventional ETL tools, they store their transformation information in a relational database. And that allows you to very effectively trace for a particular data element that you have, say, in your fact table or your dimension table somewhere in your warehouse. If a user comes back to you and says, well, what were you smoking when you calculated it? You can trace very easily in a tool like, say, Informatica or
Right.
Ab Initio, one of those. You can go walk all the way back very quickly and find out where it came from and what happened to it along the way and why it is what it is. So is there, from what I see, from what I've seen so far, the data lineage that you guys are providing is more like being able to see the workflow of execution and transformation on a reasonably high level. But do you think that you will be able to accomplish the tasks of doing data lineage at the data attribute level with a graph database? Or do you think you may need a different form of database technology to accomplish those types of, if I want to trace an attribute all the way back, find out where it came from and what calculations or summarizations or whatever happened to it along the way. Do you think that you will continue keeping data in a graph database, and do you think you will be able to do this functionality?
I agree that the lineage currently is fairly coarse-grained, so it's not at a data attribute level, but it's at a coarse grain of a data set or a process level. But with the pipeline designer, what we are hoping that it should be possible for you to figure out a particular item in one of the tables, how did it get built out, right? And what are the source that makes it. So along with the lineage of the coarse grain information and the metadata that is available in the pipeline designer, you should be able to get the lineage at an attribute level, though you will not be able to get a lineage at a record level. So if I were to look at a particular offending record or information, and I want to know how did this get into being, there is no tracing for that per se. That's something that we are not looking to do.
So basically, if I currently use Falcon the way it is, I have a fact table or dimension table in a particular record with a particular attribute that's the concern. My user comes to me based on the report, says, this attribute is X and it really should be Y. How did you calculate it? So what I would like to avoid is being able to look at a whole bunch of code in the form of pig scripts, Java code, MapReduce code, what have you, that's scattered all over the place, because it will make it a very time-consuming process for me to analyze this whole ETL pipeline to figure out what the hell happened to this attribute. If I were using, say, a conventional piece of data warehousing technology like Informatica or Ab Initio on top of a relational database, for instance, then I'd be able to walk it back very quickly, because what it does, it stores all of these transformations logically, not physically, in the form of relational database tables, and it'll just run a query behind the scenes and produce a report telling me everything that happened to it. So do you think that you guys plan on solving this problem somehow at some point in the future, or
Yeah, we'll take this
Yeah.
offline. So
Alright.
at an attribute level, we should be able to have the lineage, but beyond that, it's going to be a little challenging, I guess.